Hello and welcome to another Star Wars The Old Republic video. In this video, I want to show you how easy it is to transition between Madness and Lightning or telekinetics and balance. I did start by learning Madness and now I'm trying to learn Lightning. So I'm going through all the steps required and it is very easy compared to a lot of other classes, and there's a lot of reasons why this is quite useful. If you can play Lightning well, it's a very good burst class, very useful in a lot of different situations. And then Madness is just a much easier class to play in general, and it has really amazing AoE in comparison to Lightning, so there's a lot of benefits. And this is one of the few classes where basically you get to keep all of your gear the exact same without making any significant changes. So in this video, we're going to be going over a little bit about the swapping between the two, what you need to set up to be able to quickly swap between the two. And then we're going to actually go into a little bit about how Lightning actually plays as a class. And if you were a Madness player like me originally, what you can do to make yourself better at Lightning, and some of the things that have helped me be able to do some pretty reasonable DPS on this class. Still working on it, but definitely getting up there and it's starting to look pretty good. So yeah, let's head into the main part of the video now. Alright, so the first thing we want to know when switching between Madness and Lightning is you want to know a little bit about the class, what you're actually going to be doing. I'm going to give you a brief overview of some of the research I did. We're going to really cut this down though and just kind of show you a lot of the results. Gearing, so again, Gathering Storm, Storm Watch, Force Sensitivity for your amplifiers. Everything else is pretty much the same as you'd build any other character. And then Alacrity 2300, you can do a few different builds. There is a build that's about 1820 Alacrity. There's a build that's about 2130 Alacrity. And then there's even a build that's all the way up to 2600 Alacrity. A lot of players say just play around and figure out which one feels best for you as a player. And his opener, we're going to skip that. Most people don't use a big complex opener like this. Single target priority rotation. So this is very similar to what I'm using for speed, using on their Thundering Blast. And then polarity shift you generally use on cooldown. Affliction is the highest priority for an actual physical attack you do. But the way this class works is you refresh Affliction by using Crushing Darkness and Chain Lightning. So chances are Affliction is going to stay up for the whole fight if it's a single target boss fight. If you've got multiple enemies, you have to think about reapplying Affliction or refreshing it with these abilities. Chain Lightning does work like an AoE, so it can refresh Affliction on a whole group at once. At least that's what other players have told me. I have not tested this yet. So that leaves us with Thundering Blast is our highest priority, the most amount of damage. And then Lightning Flash is going to proc our Storm Watch tactical. In general, you want to have Lightning Flash and then Crushing Darkness. They both have the exact same cooldown, so most of the time it's going to be Lightning Flash followed by a Crushing Darkness immediately. There are some times where I'll get off Lightning Flash and Thundering Blast will be up, so I'll do Lightning Flash, Thundering Blast, Crushing Darkness. It puts them out of sync. It's a little annoying to work with. It's up to you if you want to work on that, but again, the skill ceiling is quite high for getting that maximum DPS. So as you're learning, you can just kind of think of it as like Thundering Blast on cooldown, but as soon as Lightning Flash and Crushing Darkness are up, you just do Lightning Flash, Crushing Darkness, and then go back to your normal priority. Now, Shock is only the 5 seconds after Crushing Darkness due to a 35% damage buff. Otherwise, Shock is not worth using. Shock is really not in the rotation as priority. It's more like Crushing Darkness and Shock together. But you can always delay your Shock because it's 5 seconds, 3 GCDs that you use, and then do a Shock. Shock can also be used when you need to be mobile. Crushing Darkness needs to be channeled while standing still. Lightning Bolt can be procced with your force speed to instant cast 2 different times in a row. If you need to hard cast Lightning Bolt, just do it. Just know that you can't cast Lightning Bolt while on the move. You should never be using Chain Lightning if it's not buffed. Figured out our priority system. We figured out how a few of the different things tick. So, Shock should only be used within the window of Crushing Darkness. Chain Lightning should only be used whenever it's an instant cast, so glowing. And then Lightning Bolt is going to be your main filler there. Recklessness is something that's going to make a difference in your overall DPS as you're looking to maximize that skill ceiling. So basically, if you're at the point where you're just spamming Lightning Bolts, don't use your Recklessness. There we go. That's how we've kind of figured out the basics of this class. I skipped quite a few things because I've already read through that in detail. So how do we actually switch? So right now you can see I can abandon this discipline. If you have not already done so, you go into your Legacy and you pick Field Respecialization. And that way you can do it anywhere in the game. You don't have to travel to one of those terminals that allows you to do it. Now we can hit abandon, go accept, and then we're going to pick Lightning and we're going to commit. So right away it's going to ask you to get your utilities. Thing that I would suggest doing is having a screenshot so you can fill these all out quickly. So there we go. I have set up all of my utilities and we'll just hit commit. Now we just need to change a couple items and change around. So what I've done is in my inventory here, I've got level 70 relics. Level 75 relics are currently equipped. I've got my Madness AoE tactical, and then I've got my Lightning tactical. So Lightning, and then I've got my 2 items to change my alacrity. Boom, suddenly all of our stats have been adjusted. I only had to switch 3 items. As I said, it is freaking amazing how easy it is to swap gear-wise between these two classes. Now let's show you what we need to do to rearrange our ability bars. So a few of the abilities automatically change on their own. Let's start rearranging those. So I'm going to put Affliction in front, and then we're going to look for Thundering Blast. We know that Crushing Darkness is going to be 4th. Lightning Flash is going to be the 3rd. And then we're going to want to go Shock into Chain Lightning into Lightning Bolt. Force Lightning we don't use. I'm going to leave it on my bar just to make it easy to swap between the two classes. So basically Force Lightning and Shock are the ones that kind of swap each other. So you bring Shock into the rotation for Lightning, you leave it out of the rotation for Madness, but you still have it on your bar just in case you need it for the mobility, as it is a fill you can use while on the move. And now I am 100% set up for my priority system and all my abilities. There is one other thing that I found extremely important and extremely valuable about learning this class is we want to go into our preferences and we want to go under controls. And you want to change this. So usually most classes I'm very happy with 0.5. For whatever reason with Lightning, telekinetics, I need to set this at 0.75 or the game is just a clusterfuck. Now the important part is actually being able to do decent damage as Lightning. So before we get into that part, let's take a quick recap, quick look. So what I've done is I've actually saved some screenshots in case I ever need to reference them when I don't play it for, say, a month or 2 months. This will come in a lot of help having these screenshots saved. Okay, so now let's actually get into the priority system. Do use your alacrity buff before you apply your dot. It definitely makes it tick fast. I have found that I like keeping Lightning Flash into Crushing Darkness in sync. You can spam your force speed while Thundering Blast is channeling, because Thundering Blast actually has travel time, and you can actually get your force speed to activate before the ability actually hits. So that's what a lot of players do, is they'll actually spam force speed during the Thundering Blast cast. You can see a 15-second cooldown versus an 8-second cooldown, so they're going to be very close to in sync. We're talking about 16 seconds for hitting up every other Thundering Blast. That's worth delaying your force speed 1 second to have it pop on a Thundering Blast. So a few things that I've done to simplify it and make it a bit easier is we're never going to use Shock unless it's after Crushing Darkness. Shock has a very short cooldown, so technically you could use it twice every Crushing Darkness, sometimes even 3 times, but it only does 11,100 damage kind of on the top end if it's not buffed, whereas Lightning Bolt, which gives you a bunch of other perks, does 11,400 on the top end. So it's worth using Lightning Bolt instead of Shock whenever Shock is not being buffed. So basically Shock is not really on the priority system. It's only right after a Crushing Darkness, provided that higher priority ability isn't up. Chain Lightning, as I said, is not worth hard casting. Chain Lightning can only become an instant cast every 10 seconds. If we look at Lightning Storm, our passive, generally you're only ever going to use Chain Lightning when it's actually glowing. And if we look at the cooldown on our stuff, we've got 13.4 seconds for our Lightning Flash into Crushing Darkness cycle. So it's kind of like once per cycle of using your Lightning Flash and Crushing Darkness. Now we've basically taken my 5 and my 6. They're barely ever in the priority system, and it makes it much easier to think about what you're going to do. So really you're just looking to say, I always want to use Thundering Blast on cooldown, and I generally always want to do Lightning Flash followed by a Crushing Darkness, and then Shock provided that Thundering Blast isn't ready. Generally what our priority system is going to look like then is basically Thundering Blast is the number 1 priority, Lightning Flash with Crushing Darkness is number 2 priority, Shock after Crushing Darkness is number 3 priority. Chain Lightning when it's buffed is number 4 priority. Lightning Bolt is the last priority. And then an unbuffed Shock is only ever used when you need to move. Hard cast Chain Lightning generally should only be used when it's a precast. You just generally don't want to use it because it takes so long. That damage it does is actually a lot worse than Lightning Bolt when you look at it as terms of damage per second. Let's try going through another rotation real quick here again. So we'll activate our Polarity Shift, Affliction, and then we're going to activate all of our buffs, and then we're going to go straight into basically just the priority system, just like that. And then we're going to go back to our Thundering Blast. We're not going to use Shock because it's not buffed, but that Chain Lightning became buffed. And now we're waiting for this into this. And then I guess I could have held off on the force speed for Thundering Blast. I should have. Now, the other thing to note is because of the way that Chain Lightning can only be procced every 10 seconds to be a fast cast, you don't need to hit Chain Lightning before you hit Lightning Bolt. So, Chain Lightning, you want to hit it whenever it's buffed, but if you're not 100% certain it's going to be buffed, just hit a Lightning Bolt instead. It's not a real DPS loss. We're not going to be using Chain Lightning on cooldown. As a cooldown of 5.4 seconds, we're only using it every 10 seconds at best case scenario. And that 10-second proc on it becoming instant cast, it has to do with when you proc Chain Lightning becoming instant. So there's quite a few abilities that can proc Chain Lightning to become an instant cast. So we'll proc it again. So now we should have 10 seconds until we can proc it again. We're going to just keep casting these lightning bolts. And there we go. Now it's finally instant again. And you can see how long that ability was off cooldown already before it got instant procced. So you barely have to think about it. Once you see it's glowing, you can switch to it when you have good time. But you've got like 3-4 GCDs where you wouldn't be using it anyways because you're waiting for it to be instant cast. So it can totally be delayed, no issue. And again, shock, we're only worried about using shock after crushing darkness. That is kind of the most that I've learned so far. Kind of the tips that I can share is pretty much what we're looking at is Thundering Blast on cooldown. And then as soon as we have Lightning Flash up, we want to do Lightning Flash followed by Crushing Darkness. And then we'll do a shock if Thundering Blast isn't off cooldown. Otherwise, we'll do a Thundering Blast before a shock. And then after that, it's just only use Chain Lightning if it's glowing and you have nothing else to use. And spam Lightning Bolts, and do not be afraid to use a Lightning Bolt when you think you have a Chain Lightning proc. You can always delay your Chain Lightning. Remembering when to use Recklessness, it's a little bit hard. You always want to try and use Recklessness before Thundering Blast if possible. And Force Speed, you always want to spam that during your Thundering Blast. Again, little things like that I quite often forget to do. Oh, and you also want to make sure that you lock your bars. So there you have it. Those are all the basics that you need to know to be able to go from Madness to Lightning. Lightning has a lot of unique advantages that make it worth playing, but it's also a class that's very hard to hit that good damage numbers. A lot of players struggle to break 20,000 DPS because it just takes a lot of practice to get there with this class. It's not a straightforward static rotation like Madness. You have to do a lot more thinking on your feet. It's a little bit more distracting. And, I couldn't believe what a difference it made changing this ability activation queue window from 0.5 to 0.75. And now let's say that we want to switch back to Madness. Really easy to do. So again, same process, just in reverse. We're going to go select Madness. We're going to commit. We're going to pick our utilities. Thankfully, the utilities are pretty much the exact same. And now we can open up our abilities window again as we rearrange our bar quickly here. So we're lock that. So demolish is our highest priority. And then we're going to have Creeping Terror Affliction followed by Death Field. What you're going to notice is Force Leech is the one ability that you actually need to put on your bar. So we put Force Leech on our bar, and then we're going to swap our Shock and our Force Lightning, and then Lightning Strike, and then make sure we lock our bars, and we go into inventory, and we swap out these 3 items, and boom, we are back to Madness just like that. Very easy. So hopefully you guys find this really useful, seeing how easy it is to swap between the two. The hardest part is that Lightning is a harder class to master. It's a harder class to do good damage with. Hopefully the tips I shared with you about using the priority system and how you can kind of ignore a couple of the abilities during the majority of the thing will help you a lot. And that ability activation queue window, play around with that. Again, the alacrity that you want to hit, play around with that to get to the point where you want to be. So as always, have a great day, and we'll see you in the next video.